So we continue with our series on the crisis of teenage pregnancy in the country. This year saw the number escalate from 90 in 2024 to 130 this year. This is based on the final number of babies delivered on Christmas Day in public health facilities. The National Health Department says a total of 1,668 babies were safely delivered on Christmas Day. This is compared to 1,360 babies which were delivered this time last year. Gauteng recorded the highest number of newborns at 428 babies. But what can be done to protect young girls from falling pregnant? And is enough being done to advance sexual education? To talk about this tonight, we are joined by Phinah Kodisang, who is the CEO of Soul City Institute for Social Justice. Phinah, thank you so much for joining us on the late edition. Last night on the late edition, we explored mostly the exploitation that's associated with teenage pregnancy. Tonight, Phinah, we would like you to help us to get into the minds of teenagers and what leads to their vulnerability, because it's not all of them who fall pregnant because they come from dysfunctional and poor families. Others come from functional and okay families. But what would be happening in the mind of a teenager?
Thank you for having me tonight. Look, we as a country have really failed the teenagers. We have failed to safeguard them. So when you ask what happens in the minds of a teenager, there's a lot that happens. One, the issue of, vulnerability, as you rightfully said, to economic issues, right, in the home where they find themselves vulnerable to people who have resources who say, for me to give you this, I want sex in return. And so in that stage, you can't even negotiate safe sex, you can't even negotiate, or even use consent. You are already exploited. So there's exploitation that happens. And these young girls, are also pressured sometimes by their own families to say, Takata, how they are, making ends meet out there. You are here, and what's wrong with you? This is what we get to hear from the teenagers themselves as they tell us, the type of conversations that happens in some of their homes. But also there's pressure. Social media has put a lot of pressure on these young girls in terms of what being cool looks like. There's pressure to have these latest bags, these latest brands, these latest hair and cell phones and all these things. And if you don't have resources yourself, you are going to be targeted by those who have resources, who know that you are actually looking out for these things that they can dangle as a carrot before you. In exchange for sexual favors.
Yeah. Phinah, we differ as families and as parents in how we engage with our teenagers, particularly on topics such as contraception and just intimate relationships or sex in general, whether it is just having sex or to prevent early pregnancy. How should we be having this conversation in a language that a 16, 13-year-old can hear? Because sometimes children do not hear because we parents are harsh. We are speaking so loudly that the children are not even hearing what we are saying. How can we shape our own language to make sure that at least they land in safer hands?
We start even early on when they are still young, when their body goes through different changes, right? That transformation of the body, puberty, when they start developing pubic hair, when they start having breasts as boys, when they start, seeing their penis change or harden, you start having those conversations, normalizing it as something that is normal, because most of us make it look like they are wrong to be going through those changes. It's like you are wrong to have menstruation, which is a normal occurrence, so the way we approach it is not even developmental and educational. It's more blaming. Yeah, you see, now you have this thing. If you play with boys, if you do this and whatever that, so it gets lost in translation. But if we normalize as our children are growing, as we birth them, to start having conversations to them, age appropriate, by the way, conversations to say, as you grow, these boobs will develop. They'll be bigger, like mommy's boobs. You know, you see mommy has pubic hair, you'll also have, so that they see that, okay, this is something that all of us will at some point go through. And I think by the time now they start seeing those developments in their bodies, it's not something that is shameful. It's not something that they are scared to talk about. And the reason they are scared is because we've never made it something that they can ask us about or even talk to us about. So whoever is going to give them information, if they are going to give them wrong information, that's what they will take. So the responsibility we have as parents is to start normalizing communication. It should be a normal conversation in the home without blaming, shaming, and stigmatizing.
Yeah. Phinah, what strategies does your institute propose to address things like toxic masculinity, consent, and patriarchal system that always enable these teenage pregnancies?
So in our communities, because we have different institutions, we have the church, we have the school, we have the home as an institution. All these institutions have the responsibility to create awareness, to educate, but also to protect. So we need to take responsibility as each institution according to what is prescribed, one in law, also according to what makes sense if we want thriving children, if we want thriving societies, right? So we need to make sure that comprehensive sexuality education in schools is supported by all of us, because that's what has been proven to work globally. You know, it's some kind of a tool that enables children to learn, but also learn to make informed decisions about their health outcomes. Number two, in the home, the parents should not relegate the responsibility to the teachers.
Sure.
You shouldn't say the teachers will take care of this. Be the first one to have that conversation, as I said earlier. When they go and verify the information with the teachers, it should match what you've been saying in the home. A lot of times we find a mismatch between what is being communicated in the home and in the comprehensive sexuality education. So that clash creates a vacuum and a gap where these young people then seek information somewhere to fill these gaps. And most of the time, I tell you, it will be wrong information. They'll hear things like, if you have sex with a boy without protection, you can drink Coke and nothing will happen, because somebody will claim that I did it and it worked for me. And so they are going to use that misinformation, you know, as the right information if there's no one else giving them the correct information.
Phinah, thank you so much for contributing to our series on this crisis on teenage pregnancy. Phinah Kodisang is the CEO of the Seoul City Institute for Social Justice.